Alright boys, it's that time of year again where we have some summer servants, and I wanted to do this last year, but I kind of just forgot, and so we're going to go ahead and do the summer tier list for 2022. This is going to let me also put the Summer 6 and Summer 7 servants back into the tier list based on what we've seen of them so far, and it also lets me maybe readjust some other spots if, like, I think a servant has aged a bit better or gotten a bit worse with time. Also, this year we're actually going to have MHXX because the first time I did this list, I may or may not have forgotten about XX, but this video is once again sponsored by Buyee, and if you guys don't know what Buyee is, it's basically like Japanese eBay. It's a place for people like me and you who live over in the West that might have a bit of a harder time getting your grubby little mitts on, you know, Japanese exclusive products, and they basically will allow you to purchase these products that are not in your country, you know, because there's a lot of products that either just never come to the West or it takes them literally like 8 years to finally ship it over. And with my link, if you sign up using my link down in the description down below, they will actually give you 2,000 yen into your account to make some purchases. And as you guys can see, there's some nice stuff over here. Now, me personally being a Jean simp, I was looking for some of the Jean figures they might have, and you know, if you get that 2k free yen put into your account, you could almost just get this cute little Jean figure over here. Or, I don't know, maybe you really like Ushi Wakamaru, or maybe you're a little bit edgier and you like your Jean altar figures. You know, you can find all sorts of stuff over here on Buyee. You know, it's also really good if you're like a Kamen Rider fan like myself, because a lot of that stuff just does not come to the US. So, thank you Buyee once again for sponsoring this video, and if you guys want to sign up, that is going to be down in the description down below, and you can claim your 2,000 free yen for anything you want to purchase over here on Buyee. But let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. So strap in, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to be here for quite a fat minute because we have a lot of servants to talk about, and we're just going to go ahead and start diving right into this, starting off with Mash. Now, I get that Mash technically is not a summer servant, but she has a summer outfit, so I was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and throw her a bone here. Plus, you know, why exclude Mash from all the other buxom babes that we have going on over here? And I think Mash is actually just like the definition of a very solid servant, especially if we're talking about the original version of Mash. I mean, she provides very good defensive utility, has a targetable invincibility that also comes with a 20% battery, and even if you don't want Mash to really be a part of your team comp, she has 0 cost, meaning she's a free body in your team lineup that can hold any CE. And even if you don't want her there, when she comes in, you can have her taunt herself, so that way she takes the heat off of your supports and your main DPSs. She's just overall a very, very strong servant. I mean, even her own NP gives you more defensive value and an attack buff for the entire party. So it just means she's literally the definition of a very, very solid servant, very well aging. Even the other version of Mash is not bad. It's just she's a little bit more selfish, I guess you could say. The fact that the invincibility is only for herself. She does still have double taunts, which is very, very good. And you can get some very high roll turns with the Black Barrel upgrade that she has for herself. So again, still pretty good, but if we were splitting them, I'd probably have the original Mash up here in very good, and I'd probably bump the other one down to solid, because the majority of the time you're going to be using the second version of Mash for her double taunt, right? So anyway, let's move on to our next servant. That's going to be Summer Tamama. This is actually a servant that is aging pretty well because she has a very strong special damage mod. Not a lot of the other things that she's doing are, I don't know, aging very well in particular. You know, she has her third skill that makes her go Super Saiyan God for a turn, but it does stun her afterwards. She does have a very nice charisma, but again, maybe a little power crept in the way that, like, it only gives you some star gen and it only applies to males anyway, which can be a little bit annoying. And then she has the charm skill, which is good, but it also charges the enemy's NP gauge. Now, you can time this to, you know, whenever the enemy already has a full NP, or you can even charge it in a way that you force the enemy to NP and you combine it with, like, say, Merlin's second skill, right? So you force them to NP on your turn when you're ready for it, right? So stuff like that does lend to some nice utility and some fun gameplay you can do, but overall, she's kind of starting to get left in the wayside. But that anti-male special damage mod is definitely still holding her up and still makes her a very solid servant to use. Then we move over to the other 5-star of Summer 1, and that is going to be Squirtoria, a very well-aging servant. She doesn't really do a whole lot on her kit, but what she does is good enough. She has a decent attack buff, she has an arts buff, and every time she fires her NP, she takes a charge away from the enemy. So with the way that she's able to loop her NP with the greatest of ease, especially now that Castoria is in the game, she's pretty much able to make sure that the enemy never fires their NP ever again, because she's just constantly suppressing it with her own NP. Her damage is fine, and again, the main call to fame that she has is the fact that she's able to spam her NP so well, and that does give her a lot of value, and is helping her age very, very well. Then we're kind of moving into some of the other stinkers from Summer 1. Summer 1, you know, first summer event we got in the game, some of these servants are not exactly aging super, super well. The first one's going to be Nerocaster. I guess you can maybe get some value out of her. I mean, she's getting stars every single turn. She's got a little bit of defense going for her. But I mean, this is kind of just the definition of like an okay servant. There is definitely a game plan to Nerocaster's kit. It's just not exactly the best, and I don't really have a whole lot else to say about her. Same thing for Anne and Bonnie over here, or Anne, Bonnie, and Mary Reed, my bad. But they've got a similar thing going where they have a game plan that they want to go for, but it's just not very good, right? Like, it's not, you're going to be your go-to, right? Like, if you want an AoE caster, or if you want this, you know, you want an archer to use, you have better people to go for, right? Like, there's going to be other people you're going to be pooling for in your Chaldea, aside from these two, right? So they're just the servants that are aging pretty poorly, and I could go into their kits and kind of like roast them and everything, but I feel like everybody just already knows that these servants aren't exactly that phenomenal. However, then we have Ryder Mordred, and this is a really hard one for me to rank, because I want to put her up here in very good, because she loops like an absolute champ, but I feel like you need to have the stipulation that she's got to be like at least NP2. Because I say this all the time, I've had numerous scenarios where Ryder Mordred will completely refill her entire NP and not kill the enemies, right? And that can get a little bit frustrating sometimes when it's like, dude, you literally got there, you looped 100% pre-Castoria, but you didn't kill the enemies, and you kind of need to do both. So I'm thinking about bumping her down to solid for that reason. The fact that, like, you need to get her to at least NP2 for her damage to become decent kind of means that I want to bump her down to solid, but then again, Castoria now is giving her enough extra damage that I think you can squeak her into very good, with the stipulation that you're like using where people like Castoria that are giving her enough damage to actually get those clears. But again, that's one that I'm kind of putting a little bit of a stipulation on. Kiyohime. I mean, Kiyohime is kind of just your average buster DPS servant. I mean, she can do some decent damage, but that's kind of really about it. I mean, she's got the solid buster buff. She can lower their defense and everything, but again, not a whole lot else that we're really looking at with this servant. She's not really doing anything super crazy, and what kind of saved Tamamo from being able to, like, not be down here is the fact that they gave her a really strong special damage mod, and these other guys just don't really have that. Now, Martha, I'm actually going to bump to solid as well, because Martha got saved for the same reason that Tamamo got saved. Martha's got 3 special damage mods and a battery built into her to kind of help her style of gameplay out. So, as far as, like, DPS rulers are going, people still break out Martha Ruler as one of their go-tos just because her kit is very solid for being a DPS. The very wide net that she's casting with her special damage mods is very good. The battery helps her out despite being a very, very old servant. And, you know, it just keeps her from being relegated to kind of that gutter garbage that we have for some of the other, calling them gutter garbage is really mean. So maybe just not as good servants. Let's word it that way, right? Then we have the free-to-play from Summer 1, and that is going to be Summer Skyhawk. She's actually aged not as bad as some of the other servants. The fact that she's a free NP5 definitely helps her out over a lot of the other servants. I don't know if I've specified this because it's been a long time since I've done a tier list, but when we talk about these servants, free-to-plays are always taken at NP5, pay-to-play servants are always taken at NP1, and that definitely gives someone like Skyhawk an edge. You can technically do some farming with her as well, and the fact that she's got like a taunt and she can pierce invincibility does give her a little bit of edge. It gives her some utility when it comes to farming and also challenge quests as well. So I think that's going to save her from just being in the okay category for the fact that NP5 or damage is going to be acceptable. You can use her for farming. Technically, you can get that done. And then if you're doing any hard content, being able to pierce invincibility is always going to be very, very strong. Now we're moving into Summer 2. Summer 2 was definitely a stronger year for Summer. I also think I'm going to take out this bottom tier right here because I think we can actually get the point across between these 4 tiers, right? Between like meta-defining servants, just really good servants, average to okay servants, and then kind of the bottom of the barrel here. So up next, we have Nerocaster. Nerocaster remains to be a very, very strong servant to this day. Targetable guts, big attack buff, 50% battery means that she's completely compatible with Koyenskaya's meta, and that definitely shot her up a lot in the ranks. If you're a Buster servant with a 50% battery, that means you and Koyenskaya are going to be the best of friends, right? And that definitely shot up Nerocaster a lot. The fact that she's, you know, one of the few AoE casters that's actually capable of doing some pretty good damage, all of that greatly helps her out a lot. And so, yeah, she's able to kind of get into very good because of that. Frankenstein Saber, also a really, really insane servant that never really gets talked about. She's capable of looping her NP just with the greatest of ease. I don't think anybody talks about her because all of her skills have quote-unquote downsides to them, but the fact that her NP gain can get extremely high and her damage is good considering how easy she's able to loop her NP, I think she's one of those servants that people overlook a lot, and she definitely deserves to be up here in this very good category. I mean, she's literally borderline on the tier of, like, not a cat story, but an Archer Artoria, but a Saber, right? Like, she's just extremely good. Speaking of extremely good servants, we have Maid Alter. Thank God Scotty came to the game, because when this girl officially, like, first launched for Summer 2, we were seeing that she had really, really good damage, especially being able to loop her 3rd skill, which, if you don't know, basically she can double stack her 3rd skill because she has a skill cooldown, and so she was capable of doing monstrous amount of damage, but we were kind of finding out that she was struggling to get her NP back once she had fired it, but then in comes Scotty, who gives her even more quick buffs for even more NP gain, lowering defense to give her even more damage, and then now also being able to just drop a 50% battery on her was definitely a big helpful. And now with Ruler Scotty, she's just even better, getting an even more massive quick buff to actually help her loop just a bit better. So yeah, Maid Alter definitely aged a lot better because of the quick supports that came around her, especially with the advent of Ruler Scotty down here. Nitocris kind of ends up just being a solid-ish servant, but even then I think I might dip her down to okay, because you just really don't find yourself ever really needing to use Nitocris. She could have been a whole lot better. You know, getting into that assassin class, especially being an arts assassin at that, definitely could have helped her out a lot. Could have had her be the Shuten Doji replacement and everything, but the fact that, you know, she kind of just has a mid-kit, I suppose, you know, it like borders on her being like one of the better okay servants to one of the bottom solid tier servants, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, she's not completely trash or anything, but her kit just ends up being really, really mid, and I don't know, I think she definitely suffers for it. Nobunaga Berserker, though, this is definitely a solid servant. She's definitely been aging pretty well, with the advent of like all of the Nobu servants getting their own personal Merlin and Nobukatsu. Nobunaga Berserker, I'm sure somebody would yell at me in the comments if I didn't mention the fact that she's able to loop using her Buster cards, very similar to Lancer Skyhawk. Yeah, because apparently the hits on her Buster cards are just so high that if you do like an Arts Buster chain and you got some crits on those mugs, you're going to be able to loop using her Buster cards, which is a little ridiculous. But she kind of does everything you'd want a Berserker to do. I mean, she's just there to get some big damage in there. She's got some method of survivability. She has a small heal, I suppose, generate stars per turn, which is nice. And, you know, she's got the Buster buff to, you know, allow herself to like rip into her enemies. So just like a very solid Buster servant, you know, like not quite as good as, you know, another single target Buster servant we'll get to in a little bit, but she is definitely pretty solid overall, and there's a reason that some people still break her out. Helena Archer, I have no idea what they were up to with this servant. I mean, I guess she has the battery, and she's got the arts buff, but then she's got like some random, like, just actually, like, it just says, oh, like, additional damage. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, they just completely blundered with this one. And I guess it just goes to show that just having a, you know, a card buff plus a battery doesn't make you immediately broken, because Helena Archer, I mean, like, do I even need to, like, ramble anymore into this one? She's just not very good. Raiko Lancer, though, remaining to be a very, very solid servant even to this day. The fact that she has some team utility is definitely keeping her a bit more relevant. The fact that she's capable of dropping a fair amount of stars, can buff the party with an attack buff, can give somebody a nice Buster buff, all of that makes her really, really solid, and definitely gave her a little bit of utility going into even the modern form of the meta, because if you think about it, being able to buff the other people around you, well, you're in the Buster meta, and both of your main supports, Koyanskaya and Oberon, are also DPSs as well as being supports, and so they're going to definitely like getting those buffs. So if you're a Buster servant and you specifically also give some decent buffs to the people that are trying to buff you, you're definitely going to age pretty well. So on top of that, Raiko's also got some pretty decent damage as well, so that also definitely helped her out. Then we have Ryder Ishtar. Ryder Ishtar, I really want to put her in very good, but I think she's just going to crack into the high end of solid. Like, I'll put her up here to kind of signify that's where I think she is, but, you know, my OCD won't let me not put it in order. But, yeah, she's definitely a higher-end solid servant. A lot of people will know that she is able to farm because of her first skill, giving her the decent quick buff and the decent NP gain buff. You're definitely able to get stuff done with her, but that's primarily all you're really going to be using her for, is kind of like your discount quick rider farmer, right? If you don't have somebody like Achilles or Dante's or Voyager to use, right? You're going to be using her, but not a bad option to have. Just, you know, you got better options out there. Now we're moving into Summer 3, and this is where servants get a little more bonkers. I think, aside from maybe the 3 guys in here, everyone else is just pretty nuts with this summer. I mean, if we just start off with, like, Jean Archer basically being the AoE version of Squirtoria, right? Like, she's literally just the AoE version, but she's also coming packed with the ability to stack star refund on her NP, which you're going to be stacking her NP anyway, so you can just get to the point where she's for free genning like 30 stars a turn on top of like not a K-scope, but a 20-30 that might be on your Castoria or something. Things get really nutty really quick. She's got a 40% battery, decent damage. I mean, what's not to love about this servant? The only reason I don't crack her into godly is that I'm looking at some of the other servants that are going to be in that godly tier, and I don't know if she's going to quite compete with people along the lines of, well, Ibuki over here, right? Just let's be frank. However, a servant that I do think actually does crack into that, and this might be the first controversial thing I say, is going to be Summer BB. Now, why am I putting her up there instead of, you know, Jean, right? Well, it's primarily because of BB's third skill. We still have not seen anything like BB's third skill, where it allows you to lock the cards in place for 3 turns. Like, this can make so many fights in the game that were hard extremely trivial. Like, the example that I use is the final fight for Lost Belt 4. If you've got yourself like a Scotty / someone to buff a Parvati with, and then you have Summer BB, you literally turn that into a farming node, right? Because you just set up where you're like, all right, well, I can guarantee that my Parvati is going to follow up every NP with double quick crits. She's going to refund all of her NP and smack them into the ground, right? It is such a broken skill that, on top of the fact that BB herself does decent damage, has a 50% battery, so you know that means that she is best friends with Koyanskaya. She's going to be really good into the Buster meta, especially being a Moon Cancer. Being one of those extra class peoples means that she's going to be highly sought after as a farmer, right? Because you can pretty much bring them against anything. And it's just hard to say that BB should not be in this tier 1 state, especially after she got buffed. After they buffed her, insane. Like, she was already going to make it into this tier regardless, but she's absolutely bonkers now after they went ahead and buffed her over on the JP version of the game. Then we gotta dial it back down though. We gotta bring it back and let's reel it back in. And actually, the next 3 are all just gonna be making it into solid, spoiler alert, because these next 3 are really just kind of solid options as a Buster single target Lancer, a quick AoE Assassin, and a single target Arts Saber, right? Like, they're all just decent, right? Especially like Ibaraki. Like, Ibaraki is pretty much like your standard .jpeg DPS servant. Like, it's not that she's lacking really in anything, it's just that there are other servants that will do what she does, but a lot better, right? Like, they'll have special damage mods, they'll have better protection for themselves, you know, etc, better damage, stuff along those lines. Ushi over here, I find that, like, the issue is that people really want to use her as a farmer because she's an AoE quick assassin, but she seems to just kind of fall short slightly every time people try to use her for stuff like that, right? It just seems that she's, like, maybe 80% there, but she's just waiting for some small push or something to just kick her over the edge to allow her to do that. And, you know, that's why I look forward to doing, I want to start doing these every single year, because I want to see how much they improve a lot of these servants from year to year. But as of right now, she hasn't really gotten anything to give her that extra oomph. Same thing for Maeve. Maeve can be, like, really good. She can look really strong if she gets a lot of those snapshot buffs, but if she doesn't, she can kind of look like a wet pool noodle, if you know what I'm saying. Like, she's really not doing a whole lot if you're not stacking a lot of those snapshot buffs. But yeah, they're all like solid. You can definitely get some use out of them, definitely use them in harder content, or in Ushi's case, try to force them to farm, but you're just going to have better options. Then we have MHXX. This is another servant that I think is also going to cross into the godly tier. This is one of the better single target arts DPS servants in the game. Her damage is absolutely massive. She has special damage mod against the hardest fights in the game, those being threats against humanity. Solid battery, solid survivability, pierce invincibility, can bomb stars whenever she wants them. I mean, she's just an absolutely astoundingly powerful single target art servant. I mean, I think the only people that really do it better than her are going to be people like Melusine and Aries, and we know how broken those guys are. So she's definitely in some good company. And overall, I mean, I haven't forgot about Jean, but overall, Summer 3 was like, as you can see, a very, very powerful summer for us, because the free-to-play cracks into very good. Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm a huge Jalter simp, but she literally, as a free-to-play servant, is just going to be like one of your go-to DPSs. And I mean, I know that me, alongside many other people, still break this chick out whenever they want to do a lot of damage, when they just need a very solid Buster DPS. I mean, she's capable of doing insane damage as a free NP5, has a decent Buster buff, plus battery, plus a regenerating dodge buff, which is insane, a decent attack buff to go with that Buster buff. I mean, she's just gonna be like a very, very good generic beat stick that does her job very, very well. And I know that I talk a lot of crap about Burn, but there's been recently a couple of times that I'll break her out and I'll win the fight because of the burn that she does or something. Like, the enemy will be like right at 10,000 HP, but Jalter stacked like 20,000 burn on them, and then we'll just lights out, you know, kill them with the burn. And it's been very, very useful. So I've grown to appreciate it a lot more, because Jalter has this ability that every time she attacks, she stacks burn on people. So she can stack it very, very quickly. But yeah, she's definitely one of the better free-to-plays we've gotten in a long time, just because she knows her job and does it very, very well. She just obliterates people. Now we're moving in to Summer 4, and this is also kind of a nutty summer. Like, a lot of these servants were really, really insane. Starting off with Berserker Musashi. Now, just because Ibuki exists does not mean Musashi got any worse. She did not get worse, it's just Ibuki is absolutely broken, right? It's like, Musashi's still worth like $1 million bajillion dollars. It's just that Ibuki is worth $2 million bajillion dollars, right? It's like, her value didn't go down. She's still absolutely insane as a looper. I mean, she can raw loop, no battery, just refund 100% of her NP because of her second skill. She does good damage because of her third skill, giving her that additional attack buff. And if you want to use her in challenge quest, she has, you know, an evasion she can use to keep herself alive. She has pierce invincibility to get around any annoying defense or invul strategies that the boss might be trying to throw your way. She's just generally a really, really strong servant. The only thing that I wish that they would change about her is that her NP has like a Saber-specific NP drain. Let's just make that a Saber special damage mod or something, right? Like, let's just do that and call it a day, because that would be absolutely insane. But she's also helped out a lot by the fact that she is a farmer that is a Berserker, right? So, you know, instead of being like, oh, I have Space Ishtar, that's an Avenger that hits everybody for neutral, Musashi's like, hold my beer, I'm gonna hit everybody for super effective damage, right? It just helps her do a lot more damage and farm a whole lot easier. So, definitely a very, very strong start to, you know, Summer 4 over here. Now, unfortunately, Lancerator, you guys know, I use this chick a lot. I have a lot of usage with her. Have her max growth and everything over on the NA version of the game. I think she's not going to quite crack into Godly, because I see what they were trying to do. They tried to make her the counterbalance to BB, where instead of locking cards, she would shuffle cards. And while her shuffle is really good after the buff, the fact that you can shuffle your cards, but you can also force one of your servants to not appear in the new hand that is dealt, it's still not as good as just guaranteed getting, like, bam, I'm going to guarantee all of these cards for the next 3 turns, as opposed to being like, I'm going to do a good shuffle once, right? It's the fact that, like, this is really a solution for 1 turn, this is a solution for, like, 3 turns, right? But, I mean, aside from that, she's still very good. She's capable of doing Buster looping and everything with Koya and Skya. Her damage is good. She can do very, very good crits and everything. So really no faults on her on any of that stuff. I mean, I guess you could maybe say that, like, oh, maybe her survivability is not good enough, but she's a ruler, so for the most part, she's going to be taking resisted damage from anybody anyway, so I kind of say that's her survivability, is just the class she's in. Overall, she's very, very solid, and as much as I really want to, like, simp and put her in godly, I don't think I can, right? Despite using her a whole lot, I don't think she's quite as, like, meta-defining as some of these people, right? As, like, a person whose skill has, like, literally kind of changed the way you can cheese content, one of the best single targets in the game, and then one of the best loopers in the game. I don't know if she's quite on that level. But then we're going to dial it back a little bit. We're just going to reel it in with Neat, and we're going to bring in Carmilla, because as like, we kind of meme on these two guys, but at the very least, they're doing actually something as opposed to some of these servants. And I feel like somebody's going to be offended by Nerocaster being down here, but I'm going to keep her down there. But like, Summer Neat, it's like we kind of meme on her, but it's like, when you look at her compared to a lot of the older people, it's like, oh, dang, dude, she's getting like double card buff and attack buff. She can taunt things. Like, it's like she's looking really, really good, and her damage is acceptable at the very least. And then Carmilla, you're like, oh, dude, like, this chick can like drain all the enemy and everything. She can like super debuff an enemy into the ground. Like, all of that stuff is like super, super useful, right? And like, you can actually form plans around that. So it's like, they definitely do make it above some of these guys, but I can understand some people maybe think that they should be lower, but I believe that, like, their kits are just a little bit too modern. Like, they out-modern these guys. Like, these guys, they just have, like, what seem like very dated kits, or at least, because these guys just came out 2 years later, they're just inherently going to be a lot better because they were given so much more. Next, we're going to move into Melta Lilith, and Melta Lilith is going to be right where Mordred is, because they both are basically the same servant, right? They both loop like an absolute charm. They're both, you know, just exceptional pieces to the arts meta, but they both have the struggle of damage, right? They can both struggle to actually kill the person they're fighting. Melta Lilith, at least, has kind of a backup plan where she can, like, drain the allies and supercharge her NP in case something goes wrong, and then give herself a big attack buff. And she drops stars when she's firing her NP, which makes her really useful as an arts crit servant. But essentially, they're both kind of the same servant, just in different classes, right? I would say that Melta Lilith is a little bit better because of her, like, backup plan for, like, the big battery, the fact that she can stack her arts buff together, and the fact that she can, you know, like, get some big attack buff, big drain, all that good stuff. But yeah, they're still both going to be in very good, still very, very solid, but at NP1, they both struggle a little bit with damage. Then there's Okita. Now, I don't want to put Okita down in OK, because I think Okita's kit is really strong. Like, if you look at her skills, you're like, this is one hot mama right here. Like, this is one built different servant. I mean, we're talking 100% crit damage, big, quick mana burst. I mean, we're like, she's got the whole 9 yards. She can pierce, evasion. She's got an NP damage buff to go into all of that. But it's just, the fundamental problem is that they broke her legs before she could even walk. The fact that they attached the stun onto her NP literally just took the wind right out of her sails before she could even get on the boat. You know, like, fundamentally, it causes the servant to not work and not be as good as she could be. If the stun was like, say, Tomoe Saber, and it was on like a skill that you don't need, especially for farming, she would be a lot more savable, right? You could actually salvage the servant. But because they stuck it on the NP, and they put it at 60%, like, it's not even like it's a 20% chance. It's a 60% chance. It's over a coin flip, and they gave her no way to save herself. Like, they didn't give her, like, a stun debuff immunity or anything on one of her skills. Like, nothing. Not a zilch. You know, they didn't do anything like that. Like, I would even, like, if they upgraded their NP and they maybe wanted to keep that, maybe not even have it be a thing that activates first, but after you can successfully fire the first NP, then she gets like 3 turns of stun immunity. So like, if you make it through the first NP, you're good for the next 3 turns. Like, even something like that would be good if they want to keep that like random chance of her stunning herself in there. But yeah, I don't know. You guys know I really like Okita. It hurts me to put her down here, because I was one of the people that was super gassed when she finally got her summer. But I was like, dude, really? You guys broke her legs before she could even do anything. But anyway, moving on to a bit of a better servant, Hokusai. Hokusai, very similar to like Jolt in the way that like, just very good free NP5 servant. She's got a battery, has a nice crit niche. I actually like her arts niche a bit better than the Foreigner Hokusai. The Foreigner Hokusai, you guys know that anytime she attacks with an arts card, she lowers the enemy's defense. This Hokusai, anytime she attacks with an arts card, she gets a big crit buff, so she can stack her crit buffs really, really quickly. I like that a little bit more because you're not as reliant on putting your arts cards in front of your NP to try to get that extra damage like the Foreigner one. This one you can just attack normally and just recur a whole lot of different crit buffs and just start smacking the enemy, right? She's just very, very good, capable of looping. I get that some people were a little tired, especially, I believe it was actually this year where we got like Hokusai, Aries, and then we also got some other arts free-to-play server. And I get that people are a little bit tired of getting all these arts free-to-play servers, especially this year, but that's not to deny that she's absolutely exceptional. Moving on to Summer 5. Summer 5 was a little underwhelming for a lot of people, because I can tell you right now, I think the only servant that's making it into Godly is Kiara. Kiara, to this day, kind of remains one of the better AoE art servants in the game. Also, kind of did something very similar to BB in the fact that she introduced the concept of skill upgrading, right? Where Kiara has this ability to upgrade her skills mid-battle, right? And her skills get stronger the longer the fight goes on. Some people foolishly think that she actually needs to upgrade her skills to actually be a good servant, but it's like, yeah, if you wait for her thing to upgrade, you get like a 50% battery and everything. Like, that's really cool, but for the most part, like, if you're farming, the 30% battery plus the stars it drops is going to be enough, right? But if you're really worried about it, even for a farming sense, by the time you get to turn 3, her skill clocks will be like all the way to 2, so you can fully upgrade one of your skills. So if you're really worried about like not doing enough damage, you can pop skill 1, let the mermaid counters build up, and then remove 2 of them for skill 3 on the final node and get that extra damage and stuff, right? So like if you're really worried about it, it still works out for farming. You just got to be smarter than the average bear to, you know, get it done, you know? So she's, yeah, still very, very exceptional. Again, very similar to like why BB's really good for farming. She's really good for farming because she's a moon cancer, which means she's going to be neutral against a lot of opponents. So very, very strong. Abigail, they tried to give you a new status condition and hope that would be good, but it turns out that it's kind of just worse stun. I mean, sleep is neat because it's like, in theory, it's a 2-turn stun, but it's like, you also waste the stun if any of your allies hit the enemy that's sleeping. So that means all the AoE guys are just completely out, and if you're using this for like a 1v1 scenario, you're going to waste it immediately. You're going to put them to sleep, and then immediately wake them up in the following attack, right? So it could just be really, really annoying to use. It's like, good idea in practice, execution didn't exactly work out, and then she kind of just, I don't know, over-specs into debuffing, right? Like, she's almost like a Buster 5-star version of Carmilla, right? The reason that, like, she's kind of held back is that, like, all she really does is just, like, debuff the enemy a lot. But she's not really, like, doing anything else to kind of capitalize on that. And, like, I see that they tried to do something interesting with Abigail, but it didn't exactly really work out. Ilya over here, I'm actually contemplating putting her up in very good, because Ilya actually is a very, very solid servant. She has the Triforce of farming. You know, she's got the card buff, she's got the battery, and she's got the NP gain buff. Outside of that, she could literally be doing anything else, and she'd be really solid. And she does do other stuff on top of that. Like, she has a charisma. You know, the fact that, like, she's got, like, a pretty decent damage, even at NP1, just allows you to get a lot of mileage out of this, this girl that also, as a quick servant, happens to be able to farm with Castoria. So, you know, I don't know. You tell me why the quick servant is able to farm with the art support. Maybe Castoria is just that built different, or maybe Ilya is just that good that she can be on, like, numerous different teams. Bryn Hilder, as much as I really want to simp for this servant, she's kind of just going to be relegated to being a very, very strong single target servant. You can maybe argue that she should probably be in very good, maybe, because she, like, if you compare her with Jalter, they're kind of similar, but it's more like Bryn Hilder is a little bit more tanky, but not as, like, fast to the punch, if that makes sense. Because Jalter's got, like, really good NP gain, and the fact that she's also got, like, a battery can really help her, like, speed along into, like, killing the opponents, especially being an NP5, means that her damage is really good. Whereas Bryn Hilder is nice in the fact that she's got, like, double evasion, damage cut, she can buff Bryn Hilder's beloved and everything, and hey, even has, like, pierce invincibility on her own NP, but it's like, she can be a little slow getting there, right? Like, she can be a little slow getting to the NP, and even with all of her defense, she might actually die before she actually gets there, since she is a Berserker, right? So, I'm going to relegate her to being, like, a more high-end solid servant. Same thing for Tomoe. Tomoe, they kind of gimped this one up, they kind of messed it up a little bit, but it seemed that they learned from their mistake with Okita and made her a little bit better. I mean, you can use Tomoe with Castoria to some type of success, but you kind of have to bend over backwards a little bit to get it to work. Actually, surprisingly, the servant that's going to be the star that actually breaks into very good as well is actually going to be Murasaki. Murasaki is one of those servants that I actually think is like massively passed over. A lot of the times people just don't seem to actually give her the credit she's due, but she's like, I would say, a debuff servant done right. Like, so instead of like Abigail just being like, I'm just gonna lower all their defense and that's all I'm gonna do, it's like Murasaki's like lowering all that stuff for damage, but she's also doing control things, right? Like limiting their ability to fire skills and NPs and such, right? So it's like she's really good into like challenge quests, and the fact that she can kind of control and limit what the enemy is doing while also doing some pretty good damage herself. And then finally there's the free to play, and there's you, and I almost want to put you in like the godly category, because Summer Yu just kicks butt. Like, she is absolutely insane. I mean, she can drop, like, you know what, actually, I'm reminded of a stream I did a couple of days ago where Summer Yu was able to drop just a casual million outside of an event. We were doing the Seraph event, because you could do the main interlude over on JP for quartz, and we were just using her, and she was just like, yeah, here's a casual mil, followed by a casual 1.3 mil, and I was like, yeah, and she's like refunding her NP like an absolute mad lad every single time. So Summer Yu, if you haven't been using her, damage mod is good, NP gain is good, it gets even better if you're fighting on like specific battlefields, guts is really solid. I mean, this chick does it all. She's absolutely insane. If you haven't been using her, take her out for a spin, you'll have a great time. Anyway, moving on to Summer 6, I think everybody in Summer 6, spoiler alert, is pretty much a banger. Like, everyone here is pretty much, like, really insane. I mean, Summer Kama. Do I really need to, like justify Summer Kama being a godly servant? I mean, until, like, Ibuki came out, she was arguably, like, the best arts AoE servant. Like, she was arguably, like, your go-to farmer for arts AoE servants. Okita Saber, arguably one of the best AoE quick servants in the game, right? Again, like, when we're discussing, like, oh, who is the best, like, quick looper, it's like, oh, yeah, we want to talk to people like Dantes and Voyager, but even, like, main class people like Okita Alter get brought up because she's just insanely good, right? Like, she's definitely, like, one of the loopers that Quick needed. I guess the only thing that holds her back is that she is a Saber, and that means that she can get stopped by, like, Archer class nodes and stuff like that. But, hey, if Muramasa has taught me anything, where there's a will, there is a way. And if you want her to loop against Archers, I'm sure there's a way to do it. Then Corday. Like, Corday's absolutely insane. Corday's, like, the fact that, like, she can either double charge her own NP or charge her NP and then someone else in the parties. The fact that, like, her special damage mod is just inflicting confusion onto somebody, and so whenever you do that, then she gets a 150% special damage mod. It's capable of, like, kind of looping her NP in a very, very strong way. Just a strong single target caster. Like, if you're tired of using Medea and you want somebody with bigger assets, we should say, give Corday a spin. She's absolutely amazing. She's cracked at Fortnite. Same thing for Anastasia. Like, Anastasia's, like, good damage, 50% battery. Like, it's like, what do you want? Like, she's a crit servant that, like, funds her own stars while also being an art servant as well. Like, cracked. Like, they dropped two really strong single target arts DPS servants on the same banner, right? Like, they were like, here's one for caster, here's one for archer. Like, here you guys go. Like, they just loaded us up on that banner. And then even the other banner, Say, just continues the tradition of keeping like 3 different damage mods on her NP, and she just curse max all of them. Like, Man is really good, Shadow Servant is something you could find in farming. Not as good now that she's, you know, a single target, but it's still absolutely insane. Like, this girl just absolutely annihilates. The only thing that I guess is holding her back a little bit is that she's a Zerk, and I wish that she had a little bit more than just a big heal for herself. I wish that maybe she had like a guts or like an invincibility or something, but I mean, with all the damage she's going to be able to just spill out everywhere with triple damage mods, I mean, yeah, like, she's definitely making up for it. Like, Say's like, my survivability is making sure the enemy is dead. Like, that's how I live. Arjuna Alter style, right? Where, like, Arjuna Alter's like, my survivability, I mean, this guts is nice and all, but the enemy's going to be dead before I have to use it. The only servant here that I think you can make an argument for going into solid is Canis, because Canis is like the only one that's not exactly super insane, nuts to butts cracked. Like, Canis is the only one that's kind of just like an okay DPS servant. Even then, I think you can maybe push the argument for her to being very good, but compared to some of the other guys, you know, like, 60% battery, 50% battery, triple special damage mod, staple farmer. She kind of does fall flat a little bit, so I think to make Summer 6 not as, you know, OP, I think I'm fine leaving her in solid because she is just very solid, you know, good attack buff, good card buff, crit niche. The more you fire her NP, the more she stacks crit buffs, which is also really, really good, but you know, if you personally wanted to bump her to very good, I wouldn't have a problem with her being up here as well. It's just, for me personally, maybe it's my bias against Canis that keeps her down in solid, but I could see an argument for her being in very good. Let's just make sure that's understood. Then Vinci Ruler. Vinci Ruler's nuts. She's literally like a free-to-play Omni support type. She gives NP damage, and an Omni card buff. You can put her in any team comp, and she'll support. Like, she can do support for you. I know that she's not supposed to technically, quote-unquote, be a support, but you can use her for that, right? Because, again, she's literally giving stuff that any party would want. The fact that she gives an Omni card buff means that she can support anyone. NP damage, going to be good for anybody as well. That not only allows her to double buff people, but, again, that's Omni, like, useful, right? Like, anybody that you're going to be supporting is going to want that NP damage buff, unless I guess it's like Super Orion. He doesn't really care about an NP damage buff. But then she also gives, you know, just NP to them as well, like a 20% battery. That's really, really good. Like, she's just like kind of the good generic free-to-play support that everybody should want and should definitely farm. But now we move in to the like most broken summer of all time, because dude, Lady Avalon. Lady Avalon literally just being like, what if we took Merlin but made her arts? Bada boom, bada bing, you got Lady Avalon. And is Merlin still a godly servant? Yes, just because Koya and Sky is out in the game doesn't mean that Merlin is any worse. Lady Avalon, just because Castoria exists in the game does not make her any worse, right? She's absolutely insane. I mean, I think the fact that against any 3-person node, she can literally come in and just insta spawn in at 100% NP is nuts. The fact that she's also giving some crit support to arts teams is absolutely insane, because that was kind of like the one weakness for double Castoria setups, is that you really wanted to have like double 20-30s, right? Because you didn't really have any quicks or like crit support. But between her dropping crit stars on her NP and now giving art setups access to that 100% crit damage buff, without having to use Merlin, where you just get like the Buster buff that you're really not going to be able to use, but giving you the arts buff that you can actually take more advantage of, is just absolutely nutty. And she also kind of gives you healing in a way, because she raises your max HP, so she's not like raw healing you, but this is almost better, because then you can start like tanking hits you shouldn't be able to tank. Like, I've started to get to points where like just even bringing a friend Lady Avalon, I'm like, dude, my Ibuki is at like 25,000 HP. I was like, she is like kind of just shrugging off hits at this point. She's like, okay, yeah, I'm a Berserker. Ooh, I just took 7,000 damage. It's like not even a third of my health. It's like absolutely insane what she can do. Ibuki, dog. They literally just said, what if we took Kama and what if we took Musashi and then just smacked them together, right? They're just like, what if we just took the raw looping ability of Musashi and the big damage and big thicky battery of Kama, smack them together. Oh, we're going to keep her as a Berserker, by the way, so she's super effective against everyone. I mean, super effective against everyone except foreigners, but again, how often are you fighting waves of foreigners? Not exactly all that common. Absolutely nutty. Don't think I really need to justify Ibuki, because she's absolutely cracked. Ruler Scotty, I don't know why people are like throwing a hissy fit about this servant. She's absolutely nuts to butts broken. I've done like 3 videos on her at this point. If you don't understand why she's this broken lady at this point, then I don't know what to tell you. Like 65% quick buff, 100% buster crits, additional buster, just 50% buster buff, an attack buff that you can carry through all 3 nodes, 50% battery, the fact that she can also be the looper or the supporter. I mean, she just does everything. She's absolutely insane. Part of the reason, by the way, that this video, as we move into Aries, which actually took me a little bit to make, is because I had to go look into Aries a little bit, and yeah, it turns out that Aries is actually, like, I made the prediction when the video came out that I was like, she's going to be like the 2nd best arts DPS. And yeah, that's kind of where she falls. I was doing a lot of like looking into the other arts DPS servants, and like not only is she like one of the hardest hitting naturally, but with her damage mods, she just knocks it out of the park, right? Like, I don't know why Summer Aries is this good, because like if you look at her kit, At base value, before damage mods, she just has a 40% arts buff because 10% from passive, 30% from a skill. And she's like right under Jalter in terms of her damage. And I'm like, dude, you just give yourself one buff. Now, Jalter, it's understandable why she's so high because Jalter has like a massive attack stat and she's double buffing herself with a buster buff and an attack buff. But that's balanced around the fact that the buster buff is only one turn. Aries, I don't know why she hits so hard. Like, you can get her NP back really easily. She does a lot of damage, and like has like 50 special damage mods, right? That she can apply to anyone, right? It's just like smacking curse on people, and then she's like, "Oh, you're cursed." Bonk, 150% special damage. So like literally anyone, doesn't matter if you're a dragon, man, female, everybody can get it. Apparently, Aries just said everyone can catch these hands. Summer Woo. You know, some people might be like, okay, well, the 5 stars are all broken. What are the 4 stars? Woo, absolutely nuts to butts broken. I mean, she's literally like a pseudo DPS slash support type servant. Like, she gives the whole party like attack, buster, NP gain, special damage mod that's really good against man. I mean, the only thing that you could maybe fault is the 20% battery, because ideally, if you want them to farm all 3 nodes, you would want a 30% battery, but even then, the fact that like K-Scope is free on JP, you could just find a friend Koyanskaya, let them clear wave 1 for you, then her 20% plus the free K-Scope we got, she clears wave 2, and then the Koyanskayas dump the battery into Woo, get her to 100%, bada boom, bada bing, you just 3-turned with a 20% battery servant. Like, the free K-Scope definitely helped this one out in this particular a lot. Like, they definitely gave her a lot of juice, because she's just absolutely nutty. Gareth is, unfortunately, I don't know how she's the only one in this, like, in this thing that, like, slipped through the cracks. But, like, her damage is, like, really low. And, again, my theory is that, like, she was supposed to have, like, a special damage mod against burned enemies. Like, I'm 90% sure. Like, I know this is gonna sound, like, conspiratorial and stuff, but that's my conspiracy theory, right? You know, look, normal people have the conspiracy theories about, like, the moon landing and stuff. For over here on ZTL, the conspiracy theory is that Gareth is missing a buff, right? I swear she is supposed to have, like, a special damage mod against burned enemies, right? Because everyone else has something, right? Like, all these other servants that came out, they've got something. They're either a godly support slash looping DPS, or, like, just godly DPS plus damage mod. Literally the amalgamation of like 80 different servants, support plus special damage mod. She's got stuff. Gareth is just like generic AoE Buster Saber. Like, we already have a million of those, and she's like arguably worse than Gawain, right? Like, it's arguable that Gawain is better than her, and like, not to take a deuce on Gawain, but he's not exactly the like gold star in terms of Buster AoE servants in general, right? And it's like, I don't know how they dropped the ball. I mean, you look at her kit, everything is good, and it's just like, but then you like look at her damage and her performance, you know, like, what is missing here? Like, and my theory is that she's missing a fire special damage mod buff, apparently. Like, I think that's what she's missing. Oh, then finally there's the Valkyries. Yeah, you can use these guys to loop. They do it just fine. They, you know, 10 million hit NP. Who would have thought that plus, you know, Castoria buffs, just gassing up that NP gain, even as low as it might naturally be, into Oblivion would allow her to still be able to loop with the 10 hit NP, especially being a free NP5 servant. Who would have thought this would just be an absolute god? And they've got a very, very good class, right? They got like a very, very desirable class for being an AoE art servant. But anyway, guys, this is what we're kind of looking at for the 2022 summer tier list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I will go ahead and link a link to this tier list if you guys want to complete your own. If you feel like sharing them with people in the Discord, that's also going to be linked in the description down below. So yeah, I would love to see what you guys are able to come up with. I'd love to see a little bit of chatter in the comments down below. It's been a fat minute since I've started doing a lot of these tier lists, and I'd like to bring them back again. If you guys have any suggestions for things you want to see, you can, you know, let me know in the comments down below what tier list you guys would like me to make as well. What else needs to be tiered? What else have I not done in a long time that maybe needs to be updated? Let me know all that in the comments down below. Don't forget to check out Buyee for your free 2,000 yen. And with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'm gone. Peace late, guys.